Hello, you're watching AnewZ. I'm Dilek Tuna. Here are the headlines. US President Donald Trump says the Putin-Zelensky meeting is going to happen. Israel and the United States have recalled their delegations from Gaza ceasefire talks. Tens of thousands flee their homes as Thailand and Cambodia clash. Efforts to end the war in Ukraine are gaining renewed momentum with high-profile mediation attempts and limited breakthroughs. While a ceasefire remains elusive, this week saw some progress on the humanitarian front.
US President Donald Trump says a long-awaited face-to-face meeting between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky is going to happen. However, he expressed his regrets it hasn't happened already. Speaking before leaving for Scotland, Trump emphasised that such a summit should have taken place 3 months ago. His remarks come amid heightened diplomatic efforts to end the Russia-Ukraine war. President of Turkey Recep Tayyip Erdogan is now stepping up mediation. He announced plans to bring Trump and Putin together in Istanbul for direct negotiations. Erdogan said Ankara would hold talks with both leaders this week to assess the possibility of hosting the long-anticipated summit. Meanwhile, Russian and Ukrainian delegations met on Wednesday for negotiations in Istanbul's Chiragan Palace. This was their third round of talks after previous sessions happening in May and June. The Ukrainian side proposed a high-level leaders' summit by late August to finalise a peace deal.
The priority number one is to organize a meeting of the leaders of presidents, where participation of President Trump and Erdogan will be most valuable. A real ceasefire and end to all strikes on civilian infrastructure. This can be a crucial first steps towards lasting peace. We proposed to the Russian side to hold such a meeting of leaders until the end of August.
But Russia's delegation dismissed the idea, insisting that a Putin-Zelensky meeting could only occur to formalise an agreement already reached.
For this meeting to happen, we need to work out the deal conditions first and to understand what will be actually discussed at this meeting. Actually, this meeting is not for discussing a deal, but for wrapping it up, signing the final agreement. As the saying goes, the end crowns the work. There is no point in the meeting to discuss all of this all over again.
Still, there was one breakthrough. Both sides agreed on a large-scale prisoner swap. Each side will release 1,200 prisoners of war. Russia also pledged to return the remains of 3,000 fallen Ukrainian soldiers. Ukrainian President Zelensky confirmed that over 1,000 soldiers had returned home, many in poor health after years in captivity. Russia likewise welcomed its freed troops in Belarus, sharing images of emotional reunions. Despite the humanitarian progress, there was no movement toward a ceasefire. The Turkish foreign minister urged both parties to halt what he called a bloody war, but the 40-minute meeting concluded without tangible progress on ending the violence.
US President Donald Trump has arrived in Scotland. He's expected to meet EU President Ursula von der Leyen and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, with trade negotiations high on the agenda.
US President Donald Trump has arrived in Scotland for a 5-day visit, during which he is set to meet European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on Sunday. The visit follows Trump's recent threat to impose 30% tariffs on the EU if a trade deal is not reached by August 1st. Von der Leyen confirmed the meeting in a social media post.
Following a good call with the President of the United States, we have agreed to meet in Scotland on Sunday to discuss transatlantic trade relations and how we can keep them strong.
Trump said a trade deal with the EU would be significant, adding that the chances of reaching an agreement are evenly balanced.
I'll be meeting with the EU on Sunday, and we'll be working on a deal. We'll see if we make a deal. Ursula will be here, highly respected woman, so we look forward to that. That'll be good. With the European Union, I think we have a good 50-50 chance. Thanks a lot.
The White House also confirmed Trump will meet UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer during his stay. Earlier this week, the European Commission briefed member states on the status of trade negotiations and the potential of using anti-coercion tools in response to US tariffs. Member states approved a list of retaliatory tariffs worth 93 billion euros on US imports, with only Hungary voting against. The EU and the United States remain each other's largest trading partners across goods, services and investment.
The United States and Israel have recalled their delegations from Gaza ceasefire talks in Doha on Friday. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff accused Hamas of failing to act in good faith, saying alternative options to secure the return of Israeli hostages are being considered. In response, Hamas expressed surprise at Witkoff's remarks, claiming its position had been welcomed by mediators and had opened the door to a comprehensive agreement. According to Egyptian media, Gaza ceasefire talks are expected to resume next week. Blake Sifton reports the latest from Tel Aviv.
U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, has said that the United States is recalling its negotiators from the Gaza ceasefire talks underway in Qatar over what he called the selfishness of Hamas, and said that the group is not acting in good faith. Instead, Witkoff said that the United States would pursue alternative options in order to win the release of the Israeli hostages still held captive in Gaza. What those alternative options may be is not clear at this stage. Some have expressed concern that perhaps the Gaza ceasefire talks are collapsing. Others view this as merely a setback, and still others believe that this may only be a negotiating tactic by the Americans and Israeli negotiators. Just last night, Tuesday, an Israeli official told local media that the talks have not collapsed, that despite Hamas's last proposal being unhelpful, progress is still being made. We understand that the talks are stuck on 2 points at the moment, one of which is that Hamas is insisting on the release of 200 Palestinian prisoners who were jailed with life sentences in exchange for the 10 living Israeli hostages who would be released in this deal. That number is far too high for Israeli negotiators. However, mediators have said that that number is perhaps only an opening bid, and the sides can come together on an eventual number. The other point of contention is where Israeli soldiers will redeploy to during a ceasefire. Israel has said it wants to keep its forces 1.2 kilometers into Gaza. Hamas only wants them 1 kilometer deep into Gaza. However, mediators have said that the two sides are not that far apart and that a solution may be workable. Meanwhile, as the humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to degenerate and starvation across the Strip continues to spread, according to aid organizations, pressure is mounting on Israel to act, with the leaders of France, the UK, and Germany holding an emergency call on Friday on ways to stop the fighting, to stop the war, and to get more food into Gaza. Blake Sifton for AnewZ, Tel Aviv.
In our previous Context talk show, Katie Wilson discussed the Israel-Hamas war and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza with Lieutenant General Marco Serrona and Maurice Hitch of the Jerusalem Centre for Security and Foreign Affairs. Marco shared his views on the humanitarian situation in Gaza, while Maurice explained what Hamas wants.
The worst thing is that everybody's a little bit hostage of Hamas. Because Hamas, at this point in time, it's the spoiler, of course. That is, it's no doubt about that. So what we are seeing is all the stakeholders, all the actors, taking what we can call not the best solution for the problem. So some of the Europeans recognize Palestine as an independent state. Something that is not possible. No state is there to recognize. The United States and Israel withdrawing from the process of negotiation. I can understand that due to the fact that Hamas is not anymore. It's pushing the red lines forward, so something that is unacceptable. And even the Arab countries are not doing what they can do, I suppose, because at the end of the day, the only solution is to have a humanitarian operation, of course, that could deliver food to the people and other things, of course, medical medical things, and so on. So we have had an experience last year with the Americans that somehow delivered some aid. It's better than nothing, of course. I don't know the details about the foundation, that how it's working, but it seems that it's not reaching everybody. Of course, we had seen also some problems in the delivery process, with some people being shot due to the riots, I suppose, or something like that. So the only solution for this, to try to solve the problem of the humanitarian crisis, is to deliver food and medical help.
Hamas is not interested in peace. Hamas is only interested in destroying Israel. What they're doing at the moment is using the 50 hostages that they've now held for over 650 days as leverage against Israel, demanding the release of mass murderers and demanding that Israel surrender. That is not peace negotiations. That is not even a reasonable negotiation. And that is why the US have said that Hamas isn't even interested in promoting a peace, any type of even temporary ceasefire agreement. Now, that's when you talk about the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. You should also ask, well, why aren't the UN condemning Hamas, the terrorist organization, the genocidal terrorist organization that has been holding hostages for 650 days? They are the ones who are responsible for this war continuing on. If they were to release the hostages and immediately surrender, the war could end already today.
At least 6 people were killed and 13 others wounded on Saturday morning in an armed attack on a judiciary building in Iran's southeastern city, Zehadan. Iranian media reports the assault, claimed by the militant group Jaish al-Adl, began with gunfire at the courthouse before spilling over to target civilians. Iranian security forces killed 3 of the attackers. Authorities have launched an investigation. Zahedan, the capital of the Sistan and Balochistan province, a city long troubled by unrest, lies near Iran's border with Pakistan and Afghanistan. Iran and the E3, that's France, Britain and Germany, have concluded nuclear talks in Istanbul. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister called the meeting serious, frank and detailed, with both sides exchanging proposals on sanctions relief and nuclear commitments. Iran reaffirmed its rejection of the snapback mechanism and cautioned against any move to reinstate UN sanctions. Although no breakthrough was reached, both sides agreed to continue talks in the coming weeks. To Southeast Asia now, where fierce fighting between Thailand and Cambodia along their disputed border has entered a 3rd day, leaving dozens dead. It comes as Malaysia's Prime Minister said that both countries have agreed to a ceasefire.
Deadly clashes between Thailand and Cambodia have entered a 3rd day, marking the worst fighting between the neighbours in over 10 years. Heavy artillery and rocket fire have been reported at 12 locations along the disputed border. Over 120,000 people on both sides have been displaced by the ongoing conflict. Thailand's foreign ministry says it wants a peaceful, bilateral solution. Cambodia accuses Thailand of aggressive attacks, including bombing civilian areas. Thailand denies these claims and says Cambodia fired first. The military balance favours Thailand. It has more than 360,000 personnel and advanced equipment. Cambodia's forces are smaller, with around 124,000 troops and limited air power. This round of fighting is more intense. Cambodia reportedly fired long-range artillery-grade rockets. Thailand faces accusations of using cluster bombs, a type of weapon banned in many countries because they scatter small explosive submunitions over a wide area. The conflict's roots go back to colonial-era borders drawn by French authorities in 1907. At that time, Thailand, then Siam, was pressured by France to sign a treaty that included a map placing the ancient Preah Vihear temple inside Cambodian territory. Cambodia views this map as legally binding and has used it to support its claims. Thailand disputes the map's accuracy and the treaty's validity, saying it was signed under pressure and never fully approved. Tensions rose sharply in 2008 after Cambodia listed the temple as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This triggered strong nationalist backlash in Thailand. That year, Thai soldiers reportedly moved near a disputed pagoda close to the temple. Cambodia claims this land, but Thailand says the border there was never fully marked. The dispute stems from a 1962 International Court of Justice ruling. The court awarded ownership of the temple to Cambodia by a 9-3 vote. Since then, clashes have happened sporadically, causing casualties on both sides. The latest escalation began in May, after a Cambodian soldier was killed during a border skirmish. Both countries have since imposed trade bans, withdrawn ambassadors, and reinforced their military presence. China has offered to mediate. Foreign Minister Wang Yi described the conflict as rooted in the legacy of Western colonialism. He urged both countries to resolve their differences peacefully to maintain regional stability. Malaysia has proposed a ceasefire plan as ASEAN chair, which Cambodia accepted. Thailand, which had earlier rejected third-party mediation from the US and China, said it agrees in principle to Malaysia's offer, but warned that continued Cambodian attacks undermine the possibility of a truce.
Azerbaijani and Turkish foreign ministers Ceyhun Bayramov and Hakan Fidan held a telephone conversation to discuss the ongoing peace talks between Baku and Yerevan, as well as broader efforts to ease long-standing tensions between the two neighbours. Although the official readouts offer scant details, some analysts suggest the exchange forms part of a wider regional dynamic, one that includes the Ankara-Yerevan normalization process and the broader architecture of peace building in the South Caucasus. Joining us now to discuss the Azerbaijan and Armenia peace process is academic Dr. Hakkı Öcal. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, the Azerbaijani-Armenian peace process is said to be bilateral in nature, with the recent Abu Dhabi meeting described by some as marking the beginning of a full-scale interstate dialogue. But where does Ankara fit into this picture?
First of all, yes, officially it's called bilateral talks, but we all know, everybody knows that it is trilateral talks. The Turkish relations with Armenia is also very important. If Azerbaijani and Armenian relations are going to improve, it means that the Turkish-Armenian relations will also prosper and improve. It is the natural for two nations, and Turks and Azerbaijanis call themselves, or the union between them is two states, one nation. So if that state has good relations with Armenia, then this state will also have very good relations with Armenia. And Armenians know that. And they know that any development between Turkey and Armenia is very much dependent on what their relations are going to be with Azerbaijan. And with this in mind, the Turkish Prime Minister is trying to talk to his Azerbaijani counterpart to understand the level of the talks right now between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The better that relationship between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the Turkey will have very good relations with, or better relations with Armenia, to summarize the whole thing.
Okay, so Doctor, permit me to be rather blunt here, and I trust you won't mind. Certain Armenian analysts perceived as holding pro-Turkish views have, in their writings and public commentaries, advocated for Turkey to exert considerable pressure on Baku in order to soften its position on such matters as the Armenian constitution and related concerns. So naturally, Turkey seeks to finalize its own normalization process with Yerevan, something inextricably linked to the broader Azerbaijani-Armenian peace track. But what kind of Turkish pressure, if any, could realistically be brought to bear on Baku?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't name that attitude as pressure. You cannot, as a Turk, I do not presume any Turkish authority is trying to pressurize anything on Azerbaijan. However, sometimes nations, Turkey too, and many other countries, may have some hardened positions on certain things, and if that is the case between Baku and Yerevan, Turkey might try to soften the Azerbaijani positions. That I understand, but I wouldn't call it pressure. Is there such a the relationship between Turkey and Azerbaijan regarding their relations with Armenia? I didn't read anything not in official communication, but in the press recently. As far as I know, Turkey has very good relations with Azerbaijan, and there was also some misunderstandings regarding the Azerbaijani relations with Israel and everything, but they all are solved among brothers. It is done. There's no problem there. Regarding this corridor, Zanzibar corridor, yes, Turkey is trying to implement its own policy here, but I don't think that Azerbaijan do not have any contrary position to the Turkish position.
And could the Zangezur corridor issue become a make or break factor in finalizing a peace agreement?
It could be, to say the truth, to tell the truth. It could be, because this corridor is important for Turkey and for Azerbaijan, and for Iran. Iran is also in that game as a player, and Turkey and Azerbaijan they have to balance their positions regarding Iran. Iran is an important neighbor in that position in that region, and recently they have been subject to some unjust war attempts from Israel and the United States, and Turkey has to observe delicacy, the nature of the relations in that way. Yet, American pressure on the corridor recently, Trump's again trying to buy the corridor and operate it as an American investment is ridiculous. But hey, Trump is ridiculous to begin with.
Okay, and finally, Doctor, I'll be abundantly clear once again, the opening of the Zangezur corridor is not a formal prerequisite for the signing of the peace deal. That said, President Aliyev has made it unmistakably clear that without the corridor being opened on terms acceptable to Azerbaijan, there will be no wider unblocking of communications in the region between the two countries. So what are your thoughts on that?
Again, thanks for your bluntness, open presentation of the problem. Again, Turkey would not have any policy, any attitude, any behavior about the corridor in the bilateral or multilateral talks. Turkey would support Aliyev's position in that vein too, and so far as I know, that is the case. Right now, Turkey didn't have any opinion that's different, let alone contrary to Azerbaijani positions. That is what I think.
Okay. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Wildfires are spreading rapidly across Turkey's Antalya region, prompting large-scale emergency efforts. Authorities have already evacuated villages and deployed aircrafts to fight the flames. 2 separate fires broke out across the region, with land and air operations underway to contain them. Firefighting planes and helicopters are assisting efforts on the ground. As a precaution, residents from 14 villages have been evacuated. Turkey's Ministry of Emergency Situation is operating in enhanced mode as conditions remain challenging. The President of Kazakhstan is heading to Turkey for an official visit. The leaders of both countries will meet on the 29th of July for high-level talks in Ankara to discuss regional ties and strategic cooperation. According to Kazakhstan's presidential office, the visit will focus on strengthening the strategic partnership between the two countries. The presidents will also chair the 5th meeting of the High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council, a key platform for deepening political, economic and cultural cooperation. The multinational military exercise Agile Spirit 2025 has begun in Georgia on Friday, with high-level defence officials from NATO, the EU and partner nations attending the opening ceremony. The exercise opened at the NATO-Georgia Joint Training and Evaluation Centre, co-led by senior Georgian and US commanders. The event gathered high-level representatives from NATO, the EU and foreign defence missions. The drills, which are also taking place in Turkey, involve troops from 11 countries and 2 multinational battalions. They aim to boost combat readiness, coordination and joint operational capabilities among allied and partner forces. Kazakhstan is urging countries bordering the Caspian Sea to unite efforts to save the Caspian, where water levels have been falling since the early 2000s. Kazakhstan's Prime Minister warned that scientists' forecasts for the Caspian Sea are alarming and called for decisive coordinated action to protect this unique water body. He highlighted regional initiatives in Central Asia, including the creation of a Caspian Sea Research Institute, new monitoring centres and joint programs to preserve the fragile ecosystem. He stressed that Central Asian nations are ready to cooperate on environmental challenges. And that's all we have for now from Baku. Stay tuned to AnewZ for more updates.